ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ ਐਂਡ ਗੁੱਡ ਮਾਰਨਿੰਗ ਟੂ ਆਲ। ਕੀ ਹਾਲ ਚਾਲ ਹੈ ਜੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਦਾ। ਉਮੀਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਵੀਕਐਂਡ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਸਾਰੇ ਜਣੇ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਠੀਕ ਹੋਵੋਗੇ। ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਆ ਚੁੱਕੀ ਹੈ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ 13 ਸਤੰਬਰ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਇੰਤਜ਼ਾਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਐਲਾਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਕਿਹੜਾ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਸੋਮਵਾਰ ਦਾ ਦਿਨ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਵੈਕਸੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪ੍ਰੂਫ ਕਿਹਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ, ਯਾਨੀ ਵੈਕਸੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਪਾਸਪੋਰਟ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਹੁਣ ਤੋਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਲਾਗੂ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ। ਔਰ ਅੱਜ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਕਿ ਇਹਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਵੀ ਹਦਾਇਤਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਜਾਰੀ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਗਈਆਂ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਹਦਾਇਤਾਂ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ, ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਤੇ ਵੀ ਰੈਸਟੋਰੈਂਟ, ਜਿਮ ਜਾਂ ਇੰਡੋਰ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਜਾਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ, ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵੈਕਸੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਪ੍ਰੂਫ ਐਟਲੀਸਟ ਦਿਖਾਣਾ ਪਏਗਾ ਔਰ ਐਟਲੀਸਟ ਇੱਕ ਖੁਰਾਕ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਉਹ ਵੈਕਸੀਨ ਦੀ ਲੱਗੀ ਹੋਣੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਰੱਖੋ। ਜੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਕਨਫਿਊਜ਼ਨ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਇੰਟਰਨੈਟ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਸਾਰੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੈਕਸੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਪਾਸਪੋਰਟ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਉਹਦਾ ਪ੍ਰੂਫ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਦਿਖਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਔਰ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਲੌਗਇਨ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਸੋ ਸਾਰੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਹੋਰ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਅਪਡੇਟਸ ਹੈ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਜਦੋਂ ਦੇ ਅਨਾਊਂਸ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ, ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਰਾਈਡਿੰਗ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਹੀ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਰਾਈਡਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੀ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ, ਔਰ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਹਰ ਨੁਮਾਇੰਦੇ ਤੱਕ ਸਾਡੀ ਪਹੁੰਚ ਹੋ ਸਕੇ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਮੁੱਦਿਆਂ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾ ਸਕੇ। ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਲੋਵਰਡੇਲ ਲੈਂਗਲੇ ਸਿਟੀ ਰਾਈਡਿੰਗ ਦੀ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਆਬਾਦੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਰਹਿੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਵੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਤੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲੋਕ ਆ ਵੋਟਿੰਗ ਲਈ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਤਸ਼ਾਹਿਤ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਏ। ਮੁੱਦੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਅਹਿਮ ਮੰਨੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਜੌਨ ਐਲਡਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਸੀਟ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਚੋਣ ਮੈਦਾਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਖੜੇ ਰਹੇ। ਹਾਲਾਂਕਿ 2019 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਾਂ ਇਹ ਸੀਟ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਮ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋ ਪਾਈ ਸੀ, ਪਰ 2021 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਜੌਨ ਐਲਡਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਚੋਣ ਮੈਦਾਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਤਰੇ ਨੇ। ਇਸ ਰਾਈਡਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇਸ ਵਾਰ ਉਮੀਦਵਾਰ ਨੇ। ਸਟੂਡੀਓ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੌਨ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਮੌਜੂਦ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਸੋ ਜੌਨ, ਵੈਲਕਮ ਟੂ ਦ ਚੈਨਲ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਐਂਡ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ।
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਸ਼ੈਰੀ। It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, how are you, John, and how's going your election campaign?
Well, we're very busy, as you would expect, in the final week of the campaign. We've had a very busy weekend getting people out for advance votings, and the advance polls are on again today from 9 a.m. until 9 p.m. So my team will continue to be out there. We've had lots of volunteers out having great conversations on the doorsteps, talking to our residents about the things that are important to them, and we are happy to say that most of these items, in fact, I would say all of them, are reflected in our platform in one way or another. And so lots of volunteers, lots of door knocking, lots of conversations, and now it's about getting lots of votes out between now and the election day, September 20th.
Yeah, that's good. So, John, do you think that Langley City will be one of the most watched seats in Metro Vancouver on election night?
You know, it has been a swing riding. I had won it in 2015 by quite a wide margin. I lost it by a narrow margin in 2019. We're getting very good responses on the doors, but we're also getting good responses from the media, wondering which way it's going to go this time. And we have two people who have served in office, myself and now the current Conservative candidate. And so we have our own records of how we've conducted ourselves in office, the issues that we've stood for, our voting records. Many people are interested in that. I would say one of the things that, one of the things that makes it very interesting is
you can have some water if you want.
Thank you.
Please.
I thought it was going good
It's
here.
okay, yeah.
The current Conservative candidate has been extremely social conservative. And it's brought a lot of questions about the types of issues that she has stood for, and compared to myself, who is much more on the progressive side of the spectrum. So I think it makes for a very interesting contrast, and I think that will make for very interesting media coverage on election night.
Yeah, that's good. So Conservative Tamara Jensen won this seat on 2019. So do you think John's seat could be your in 2021, and why?
Absolutely. I think that we have a very strong chance of retaking the seat. But part of it is that in 2019, it was a very rainy day on election day. We had a bit of voter apathy. People that said to me, "Oh, I just don't want to get on my raincoats and go out in the rain." And the number of people that said, "Oh, John, you have this, you're good, you won't need my one single vote." I think that cost me the election. So we've been having a lot of conversations about this is not the one to stay at home, particularly for our supporters. It's about getting out there, casting their ballot. Like I say, over the long weekend or this past weekend with the advance polls, we've had great support from our people, our supporters going out and casting their ballots. And so I think it'll be a bit of a different one. People realize that this is a battleground, and that if they want us to see the Liberal Party retake this seat and myself return to Ottawa, that my team, my supporters need to get out there, and they can't stay at home this time.
Yeah. So, John, gaps between our richest and poorest are increasing. Most of the provincial welfare plans, they just keep poor Canadians trapped in poverty. Do any of our leaders care? And if so, what are their long-term plans?
I think that, as you say, this widening gap between the rich and poor is always a concern. Our party has very much focused on the middle class since we were elected first in 2015. I think it's about putting more money in the pockets of working Canadians. And so while we want to look at making sure that the tax regime is enforced for the super wealthy, that they're paying their fair share, that they're not hiding money in offshore accounts, those types of things. It's also about how do we help the working Canadians who live and raise their families, as an example, in Cloverdale-Langley City. We've done a few things. When we were first elected, one of our very first actions was cutting taxes on the working class, and that was on income at between, I think it was $45,000 and $90,000. That would have put somewhere around $700 back in the pockets of working families. It's about helping families with children, and so there used to be a program under the Conservative government that helped people raise their children, but everybody, it didn't matter if you made $20,000 a year or $1 million a year, you made the same amount of money. We thought that was crazy. Millionaires should not be getting government money to help raise their children. And so what we did was we took all of that money and recombined it into a new program, the Canada Child Benefit. It's an income or means tested program, and so families get the same amount for their children up until about $120,000, I believe it is, $120,000, and then it's starting to get scaled back to just over $200,000, at which point families are cut off, and that starts helping address this, as you say, this disparity between low income, medium income, and high income families. In Cloverdale-Langley City alone, we have 16,000 families every month getting the Canada Child Benefit, and on average, those families are getting $6,000 per year. So that is helping them feed their children, maybe give them a sport that they can do, making sure that they have food in their stomachs before they go to school, making sure that they have school supplies. And so, that's one of the measures that we have. It's also about supporting small businesses. Many of our families are small business owners or work in small business. And so another thing that we did was we cut taxes for those small business owners when we were when I was part of the government. It's about what other programs can we have. And so one of the ones I'm very excited about in this platform is moving toward $10 a day childcare. Now, I'd like to remind your audiences that the Liberal Party had actually come up with an agreement with the provinces back in 2005 for $10 a day childcare. It was under the Paul Martin minority government, and unfortunately, the NDP and the Conservatives combined forces and brought down the government, and they killed $10 a day childcare that would have been in place now for a decade and a half. So we have once again negotiated with the provinces to have this program. It'll take 5 years to fully roll it out, but by next year, daycare costs will be, decrease by 50%, where we're also increasing the number of spaces in Canada, including in Surrey and in Cloverdale-Langley City. And so it's been really interesting, the response from families. We have working mums in particular who had their careers interrupted over the last year with the pandemic. Schools were closed. Somebody had to stay at home with the kids and help them with homeschooling. It was often the women. And so now their pensions are going to be interrupted down the road. It's about losing that income. And so if we can actually have $10 a day childcare, keep those centres open when we have issues such as we've come through, that means that that women will be able to have equal economic opportunities. It's been shown by economists for every $1 invested in childcare, it returns $3 in economic growth to the economy. And so that is a very important thing, and that's something that is going to put money. I've heard families spending, $1,500, $2,000, $3,000 per month on childcare, and so this will definitely help with that disparity in income. So those are just, I think, a few of the examples that we have that I think will really help with this income inequity that we currently see in society.
So, John, what is your comprehensive plan to address the climate change, within the urgent timelines required.
Yes, absolutely. I'm really excited. I think that we have the best plan for climate change. Now, we have a few people. Mark Jacquard, a noted professor at Simon Fraser University, has done an analysis on the climate plans for each of the parties, and he's assigned a rating. He's a nonpartisan professor, and he has given the Liberal plan 8 out of 10 compared to the Conservatives 5 out of 10, the Green Party 4 out of 10, and the NDP 2 out of 10. Now, the NDP and the Green plans have very aggressive targets, but it's also been shown through the study that it would actually decimate or destroy Canada's economy. And so we need to be making sure that we sustain economic growth as well as climate change. We had Andrew Weaver, the leader of the BC Green Party, former leader of the BC Green Party, endorse our plan as the most realistic one to get to the net zero carbon economy we need to get to by 2050. I personally had Elizabeth May, a former friend, give me a shout out of support from across the aisle for the work that I did. I had a 34-year with the National Park Service with Parks Canada prior to politics, so environment has always been very near and dear to me. And I also had worked on and chaired the Environment and Sustainable Development Committee when I was in office. So on our plan, there are many, many facets to it, many aspects, many parts to it. One of them is actually having legislated targets to get net zero by 2050, and so we have a plan with 5-year increments to actually get to the where we need to be as a society on our carbon targets. We are working with businesses. Mark Carney, the former Bank of Canada governor and then Bank of England governor, has estimated that the move to a clean economy is going to be worth trillions of dollars globally. And so we believe that if we can invest in the knowledge, in the technology, and the know-how, we can not only address our own targets here in Canada, we can also help the developing world, the international world, the global world address their climate change targets. And this will be very good for Canadian businesses. We have several things, along with targets. It's working with some of the high-emitting industries, the oil and gas producers, to reduce their targets. Transportation is a huge emitter, and so doing things like bringing SkyTrain to Langley is one very concrete step that can be taken. We've committed $1.3 billion, which is 1/3 of the cost, to add 20 new kilometers of SkyTrain, taking the SkyTrain down Fraser Highway from King George Station to Langley City. That will get hundreds of vehicles off the road every single day. And so that is our climate plan working right here in our community. It's about planting trees as an example. We've committed to planting 1 billion trees over the next 10 years. Those are currently being, the seedlings are being grown, and within a couple of years we'll be able to start deploying those. We've already started somewhat, but it's about carbon capture. It's about developing technology to both prevent carbon from going into the atmosphere, but also pulling it out. There's some very interesting things happening in, say, the concrete industry, where they're actually doing carbon capture in concrete as we build new buildings in our communities. People's homes also are huge emitters, and so we have programs to help people retrofit their homes to make them more energy efficient, or to move from oil and gas into hydroelectric and solar and other types of heating and cooling systems. We have money that is being used to help people buy electric vehicles. We've committed that we'll have no fuel-powered cars sold in Canada by 2035. We're working with the oil and gas industry to do things like cap old wells, abandoned wells in Alberta and northern BC, where we have things like methane going into the atmosphere, which is even worse than carbon dioxide in creating carbon change. We also have to worry about biodiversity loss. And on that front, we're looking at moving Canada's protected areas from 20% of our land and waters to 30% by 2030. We've committed that within the next few years, we'll add 10 new national parks and national marine conservation areas to the Parks Canada system. I'm very excited about that because that's, as I said, the career that I had prior. And national parks are great for helping with climate change, but it's also great for the human mind and body and soul to go and get out into nature and reflect and just breathe in the fresh air that we have there. So these are a few of the things. I would say another one on the electrical vehicle piece is that we are investing to have an electrical charging stations all across Canada, so you can drive from Vancouver Island right through to St. John's, Newfoundland, and not have to worry about being stuck somewhere because your electrical vehicle can't be charged. And so it's those types of actions on the ground. We're also working really closely with municipalities and provinces to do things like climate adaptation and resilience. So what we want to do is to make sure that we saw the horrific floods in New York recently where people died in their basements because of heavy rains.
Yeah.
We never want that to happen in our community. And so it's about how do we actually make sure that we're prepared for greater rain events or storm events? How do we make, we get rain in here on the West Coast, but if it gets to be more intense, can we actually disperse that water so it doesn't flood our homes and our streets? And so it's about working with the municipalities to make sure we're prepared for things like that. It's about making sure that our dikes are strengthened so that as we see rising seawater, that we're not going to see the lower mainland flooded by salt water coming in from the oceans, so we can protect our food production areas. So it's about understanding mapping of flooding areas and then preparing for it so that we're not caught off guard as we continue to see climate change happen on the planet.
So this is the concrete plan of your party.
Yes.
John, there has been no clear answer by your party and of course Mr. Trudeau on officials who choose to stay unvaccinated. What do you have to say about this?
As I'm out on the doorsteps, one of the things I keep hearing is, when will we get our lives back? When will we get back to normal? And I think that the pathway to that is vaccinations. The sooner that we can get our population fully vaccinated, the sooner we can get back to doing the things that we need to do. Now, we know that we won't hit 100% vaccination anytime soon because right now there's not an approved vaccine for children under 12. And so that means that they are susceptible to things like the Delta variant. I was listening on the radio yesterday that we are seeing children getting infected with COVID with the Delta variant that there weren't before. And so I think it's about how do we keep them safe? And the key to that is going to be things like vaccinations. The provinces are responsible for things like vaccine passports within their provinces, so they're the ones that are making their own decisions. And so in British Columbia today is the first day of having vaccine passports for our population that the BC NDP government brought in. I fully support it. I think that it's about helping people know that they can go to places that are sort of non-essential, like restaurants and gyms and things like that. It's not going to affect essential services like grocery stores and doctors' offices and hospitals, but it's about helping people make a choice that if they do not want to get vaccinated, then there will be certain things that they won't be able to participate in. But on the other hand, that means that those who are vaccinated will be able to do the things that they've been wanting to do. I've heard from older residents who have not gone to a restaurant since the pandemic started because they didn't want to be around unvaccinated people. They were afraid of having it transmitted to them. And so things like vaccines and passports, I think, are absolutely critical for us to reclaiming our lives, getting back to normal, and protecting both each other and our community. From a federal government perspective, we're really responsible for the movement of people across provincial boundaries and internationally. And so right now, although we have started seeing some easing of border restrictions, we still essentially have a closed border and only people that meet certain criteria are allowed to come into Canada. I'm hearing great support from Canadians on that, that we don't want to have people coming in who are sick and carrying the COVID either virus or a variant of it. And so right now to come into Canada, visitors have to be double vaccinated. They have to have a negative COVID test within 72 hours, and then within 2 days they also need to be tested. And that's a way of helping Canadians be protected. Internationally, each country will set its own rules. I'm being asked, why can't Canadians go to America? And America is its own sovereign nation, so they make their rules. We are negotiating with them and having discussions, and hopefully they'll allow Canadians to go back to the States who own property there, who have family there. But we want to make sure that we do it safely and properly, and so that's why we're starting to welcome the world back. We also know that the tourism and hospitality sector has been very negatively affected. And as I say, by having things like vaccine passports, it will help Canadians safely go to some of these places like restaurants and tourism destinations. But we also want other people to come, but to do it so safely. And so that's part of the plan and how I think vaccines and vaccine passports work into the safe and very deliberate steps to reopening our country's economy.
So, John, do you think this was the right time to call for election?
I absolutely do. I think that there's a couple of issues at play here. One of them is that we have spent a lot of money as a government helping families and businesses survive the pandemic. This was not something that I campaigned on in 2019. It's not something that our government campaigned on. It's not something that any party campaigned on because we didn't see it coming. And so it's really important, I think, that each party is able to put forward their vision for the country about how we'll come out of the pandemic and what that new normal will look like. Do we want to have seniors we saw in the first wave who died in their nursing homes? Is that acceptable for society right now? Or do we want to have a different vision for our seniors, our aunties and uncles and others who are in assisted living and long-term care, having the supports they need and the safety that they need? So what is each of the parties' plans for that to help them in their old age have fulfilling lives and not be exposed to things like pandemics and illnesses? It's about what other priorities will be made for spending or not spending. We've heard parties such as the Conservatives say that they would be willing to move from a public health system that we have and we're so proud of in Canada to a public-private one. Well, does that mean that when the next pandemic hits that only those who have money will be able to get care? Those are the discussions, the policy discussions that we need to have. And so I think that this is the time for each party to put out their vision and let Canadians decide where money should be spent as we continue to battle the fourth wave. And perhaps this will be the last one, perhaps it won't. So what are the visions for each of the parties? The second thing that I would say is has been a bit challenge, and I wasn't there for the last 2 years, but talking to colleagues who were in Parliament, they said that there was fantastic cross-party collaboration for the first year of the pandemic. The parties really put their heads together to figure out how to support Canadians and Canadian businesses. And so that we managed to pass a number of initiatives for government spending to help with the businesses and Canadians survive during the first couple of waves of COVID. I've been told, though, that the last 6 months or so have been very challenging, that the opposition parties have been less cooperative, and it's been more challenging to actually get the assistance that's needed for families and businesses through the House of Commons, and that's very concerning. And so I think the feeling was that let's have an election now, let's let Canadians decide what sort of supports they want, and perhaps we'll go back, or a party will go back with a majority government, or a different mix of minority government that could once again work together to make sure that we're dealing in a timely and effective manner for things like this current wave of the COVID variant.
So why are the people protesting against Liberals and throwing gravels on Mr. Trudeau?
Right, it's very concerning. That's not who Canadians are. I think we have a beautiful democracy in Canada, and we can protest with our vote. We have the right to also express our concerns through peaceful demonstration. But what we've seen over the last few weeks with really aggressive demonstrations at hospitals against healthcare workers who have worked so hard to help those who are sick in our community is completely unacceptable. And so I think that we simply we're seeing I think some fear from those who are not sure about the vaccine. Now there's great science behind the safety and the efficacy, the effectiveness of the vaccines. But I get it. There are some people who are concerned, but I think that we've moved in some cases beyond a healthy discussion and sort of disagreement. It's something that is almost more like we saw in the States under Trump. And I think that's very concerning as Canadians. Now, I don't want to single out the unvaccinated, but I think that we need to work together, and try to come up with solutions that all Canadians can work with. If people don't want to get vaccinated, that's their choice, but they may not be able to have this same access to the services and choices that they had prior to the pandemic hitting. And so I think this is a societal discussion, a dialogue that we're going to have within Canada until we're through this.
So John, do you have a real benefit for our community that everyone can enjoy, especially economically?
Sorry, a real benefit for everyone?
Benefit plans, especially economically.
Yeah, economically, there are so many things that we're looking at. The top issue that I hear when I'm out talking to Canadians is affordability. And so, we have families that say, I've rented my entire life. I can't get into the housing market. How am I going to do that? We have seniors who say, I'm concerned about my retirement. We have young families who are trying to raise their kids. And so we have a really good program, or a strong program on affordability. I'll go into a few different pieces of it. So for our seniors, we actually have programs to increase the old age security for those 75 and older, because we know that their costs go up. We have a plan for $500 per person, 65 and over, increase in their guaranteed income supplement, and $750 per couple who are on the guaranteed income supplement. And that's a way of putting a bit more money into seniors' pockets. Pharmacare is a huge issue. We campaigned on it in 2015, and we actually have figured out a pathway to a national pharmacare program. The issue that we have, and this is something that the NDP are not recognizing in their platform, that they're going to implement pharmacare. Well, we're already doing that.
Exactly.
But we cannot do it single-handedly with the federal government. We need the provinces to buy in. And we've seen that there are some of the provincial governments, including particularly conservative governments, Ontario and Alberta, that have been somewhat unwilling or quite unwilling to work with the federal government during the past couple of years. And so we cannot impose a national pharmacare program on those provinces. We need to have them come to the table and negotiate. And as we do that, province to province, we'll eventually end up with a national pharmacare program. We've already signed an agreement with Prince Edward Island to move toward this agreement, a national or a provincial system. And my understanding is that we have 2 other provinces that are actively in negotiations with the federal government. So that, when it happens, will put money into the pockets of those who are right now using medicines. It will save money. It will save billions of dollars for Canadians in Canada. For those under 40, we have a number of really exciting programs related to affordability. One of them is taking student loans for those who are at post-secondary school and making the federal portion interest-free. And so if they have to borrow money to go to university, that portion from the federal government, they will not have to pay interest on. The other thing on student loans is that right now, when a person starts earning $35,000, that's the trigger to start paying back the loan. I talked to a lot of students. I talked to a woman yesterday on her doorstep who has a daughter in university now, and this month is going to be her last month of paying off the mother's student loan. And she's a single mom. She's tried to raise her daughter and have her own home, and it's been very challenging. And so we're going to make those repayments not start until a person coming out of university starts earning $50,000. That will allow them then to start saving some money for their down payment on their own home. We're going to create a $40,000 plan that is like an RRSP. So it'll be tax sheltered. It'll earn investment income within it, and then a person can use that pot of money for a down payment on a home. Right now you can do that through an RRSP, but that has to be paid back. So if a young person has a student loan, a mortgage, and is paying back the RRSP money, it's very challenging. And so this new program for those under 40 years of age to save some money and not have to pay back their student loans will actually help them get into the housing market. We're looking at reducing fees from the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC, that will save money on the purchase of a first-time home. There are all sorts of measures on housing. We're going to build 1.4 million new housing units in Canada, and that will add to the supply. Right now we have a shortage, particularly in the Lower Mainland. We're going to stop foreign home buyership for 2 years to allow prices to stabilize. We are going to also help with municipalities in developing systems to more effectively and efficiently approve development proposals. We want to have, or we will have, a pathway for renters to get into home ownership. So it's from rental to ownership program. So these are just a number of the things. And then for businesses, those in the sort of 40 to 65 age range, many of them are, have acquired their home, are in their careers, maybe running a business. And so now we're looking at helping those people grow their businesses, their wealth, and prepare for retirement. And so there are supports for businesses related to export, to expansion, and so I think that we have a really good plan that goes across the entire population that will help with this economic recovery that we need and the success of Canada.
So, John, what are the main steps that Liberal are going to take regarding, gang violence and gun violence in Lower Mainland?
Right. There are, like, the gun and gang piece is a very complicated issue, but I think that we've taken some measures already. We've banned assault rifles. We've heard from the Conservatives that if they're elected, they will remove those bans, and that's very concerning. We have tightened up some of the controls for the legal gun owners on transport and things like that, background records checks, which are positive. So it's about making sure that licensed gun owners are complying with the rules of the land. One of them is allowing municipalities to decide if they want to enact a handgun ban within their jurisdictions. And so any of the municipalities in Canada that would say, we don't want handguns in our community because there's a risk that they could be stolen, they could be whatever, they'll have the ability to do that. It's about working with the municipalities. We've invested over, I believe, about $9 million right now in Surrey alone related to programs for at-risk youth to make sure that they're not attracted to the gang lifestyle. It's also about making sure that guns aren't coming into Canada, illegal guns. And so we live against, along the, we're next to the Americans, the largest arsenal of weapons on the planet. And so we want to make sure that weapons are not being brought into Canada illegally. So it's about working with Canadian Border Services Agency on increasing inspections for vehicles coming up from the States. It's about strengthening our ports to make sure that guns aren't coming in through those. I think we need to work with the police forces and make sure that they have the tools on the ground. But by with strong federal leadership and support financially and through legislation, we will continue to deal with the violence that we have seen in our community to make our community such as Surrey safer for our residents.
So John, also let's discuss a little bit on immigration. There are backlogs. Process is very slow, and since the pandemic it has taken a major hit. So what is your party going to do about this? It comes back in power.
Right. Immigration, when I was a member of parliament, this was one of the biggest issues. And so we have, as you say, the backlogs have become even worse. Things like family reunification, the parental grandparent sponsorship because of the pandemic. But we have significantly increased those numbers. So the ones that we didn't get processed last year have been brought forward. So there's a huge number of them being processed right now. Immigration, we need to continue working on it. I have many people that I've talked to who have been here for decades, if not generations, who still have families overseas in other countries. And they're like, I'm a Canadian citizen. I want my auntie or my uncle or my parents who have their own jobs and lives in the home country, they want to come and visit and see the grandkids, and they can't because of the way that the visa system works right now for visitor visas. Well, that's a problem. And my family is out of the Lower Mainland, and so they like to come and see us, but they're from within Canada. It would be heartbreaking if they could not get a visa if that was required to come and see us. So it's very important that some families have that opportunity to see each other. And usually, we don't have as much money when we're raising our kids to go and see the grandparents. So it's like, how do we make the grandparents able to come and see us? So it's something I'm committed to working with our government on. I don't think that there's any easy solution other than ensuring there's the resources, making sure that there are not systemic barriers. We've heard some countries have lower acceptance rates, and to me that's not acceptable. And so we need to make sure that that legitimate applications are being accepted and processed for visitor visas for immigration purposes. It's also about looking at the mix of immigration programs we have, so making sure that we continue to welcome refugees to Canada and have the proper supports for their integration and settlement into Canada. It's about the economic immigrants, so those who can bring skills and wealth to Canada. It's about students who can come here, but then have a pathway to citizenship because they're trained and they're some of the brightest on the planet who are coming here to study. It's about our agricultural workers and other workers who are coming to Canada who have skilled trades and other skills that we need. So we right now, as an example, we need French teachers, and we need doctors and nurses and nurse practitioners and engineers, and so it's like, how do we make sure that foreign credentials are recognized? So there is a lot of work to be done. I think our government, we changed a lot of the conservative policies on immigration and made it much more inclusive and open. But the work is not completed there, and I'm committed to making that a priority for me should I get back to Ottawa.
So, John, public transport in the city needs more attention. So, what is your party's plan to improve public transportation connectivity in Surrey and other connecting areas?
Yes, well, what I mentioned in my opening comments, $1.3 billion from the federal government for SkyTrain will be absolutely transformative. To me, that is about having I refer to it as the spine of the network, extended further into the valley. We are very underserved here in south of the Fraser. I would say that we're probably 3 decades behind where we should be given the development that is happening. Surrey is the fastest growing community in British Columbia, and yet we don't have adequate transport or transportation is, I think, an issue. And so having SkyTrain will provide that first option for rapid movement of commuters through the Lower Mainland. From that, it'll mean that all of the buses that are currently serving that Langley City to King George Station can be deployed to other routes. And so the west end of my riding, Panorama, Sullivan neighborhood, the center portion, Cloverdale, I would like to see additional bus services deployed there that will then be able to do community services and connections to SkyTrain. So as we need to move people in and out of the valley, we can do that. It's also about investing in things like transit, Handy Dart, so that our seniors who need to move within the community are able to do that without the long waits that we often see right now. It's about taking money. We've invested in a national transit plan, and that will guarantee municipalities and organizations such as TransLink long-term sustainable funding from the federal government that will help them convert their fleets from gas to, let's say, electric. It'll help them expand their fleet, and it's all of those types of investments that will make our communities more livable. I also think that we also need to look at other solutions like having good jobs in our communities so that people aren't having to commute into Burnaby and Vancouver and other places. And so our team has been working very hard in this area to bring government jobs and other employers to Surrey and to Langley, and that will help us keep our families at home so that we don't need to rely on transit as much as we do right now.
So you already mentioned that. So John, why people should believe on your party?
Well, I should, sorry, I missed that.
Why should people believe on your party?
Yes. Well, I think that a Liberal government is a progressive government. And it's, we recognize and celebrate the diversity that Canada stands for. Surrey, I think, I've heard has over 100 languages spoken. Talk about opportunities for being able to do trade with the world. Like, that's amazing. And Liberals support that. We are very pro-immigration. We are about families and working families, and it's about helping families get ahead. It's about recognizing that climate change is real, that we need to take action, but we need to also do it in a way that is responsible and won't destroy the economy to get there, that it'll actually grow the economy while meeting the climate change targets quite aggressively. So I think the Liberal Party is the one that best represents the values of our community and of our country. I think that we'll continue to invest to get Canadians through the pandemic and into our new normal, our return to normal, so that our businesses can thrive, that our families can thrive. It's just, we have a very exciting platform, a very, I think, visionary platform for the next 4 years of Canada, and that's why I think that your viewers and others should really look hard at the Liberal Party and our vision for Canada in the next 4 years.
Okay, so John, what do you want to say in the ending? Do you have any message for the people or community, especially Canadians?
Yes, I would say that over the last 2 years, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government has been there during a very, very difficult time as we've gone through this global pandemic. We responded very quickly with financial programs such as CERB and programs to help businesses with rent and loans and things like that. It's time now to get Canadians back to work and businesses back to work. So our government has a plan to do that, to get people back into the workforce quickly, to get the economy going. It's about helping women stay in the workforce or get into the workforce. Excuse me. It is about addressing climate change. We have a very strong leader who has done a lot of great work, and we have a party that has a great vision for Canada. I also think we need to look locally. As I said, I had 4 years of public record as the Member of Parliament. We now have a Conservative who has been there for 2 years, who has been extremely divisive and has very much so focused on a social conservative agenda as opposed to the well-being of the community. This is about a choice for local representation as well. And so for those in Cloverdale, Langley City, I invite you to look at my record, the things I've stood for, the things I've worked for, compared to the Conservative candidate. And I believe that I am best positioned to get back and to work hard and bring investments and programs to Surrey and do it in a very inclusive and supportive manner. And so that's why I'm hoping that for everybody who's watching today and your family and friends and neighbours, you'll be able to go out today and vote for John Aldag and the Liberal Party, or if you're waiting till election day, do it on September 20th. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for having me here today.
Yeah, so John, thank you so much for your time and for coming to our studio. Thank you so much, and wish you good luck.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ.
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ.
ਸੋ ਜੌਨ ਐਲਡਿਕ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਸੀਗੇ ਔਰ ਕਲੋਵਰਡੇਲ ਰਾਈਡਿੰਗ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ, ਮੁੱਦੇ ਡਿਸਕਸ ਕੀਤੇ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਉਪਲਬਧੀਆਂ ਗਿਣਵਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਅਹਿਮ ਸਵਾਲ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਇੰਨੀਆਂ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਉਪਲਬਧੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਲਿਬਰਲਸ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਚੰਗਾ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਇੱਕ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦਾ ਪਲਾਨ ਹੈਗਾ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦਾ ਫਿਊਚਰ ਬਿਹਤਰ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਵਜੂਦ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲੋਕ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਵਿਰੋਧ ਪ੍ਰਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਕਿਉਂ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਜਸਟਿਨ ਟਰੂਡੋ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਛੋਟੇ ਛੋਟੇ ਪੱਥਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹ ਕਿਉਂ ਸੁੱਟੇ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਹੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਮੈਂ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹਾਂਗੀ ਕਿ ਮਹਿਜ਼ ਇੱਕ ਹਫ਼ਤਾ ਬਚਿਆ ਹੈ, ਵੋਟਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੇ ਵੋਟ ਹੱਕ ਦਾ ਇਸਤੇਮਾਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਕਰਨਾ ਨਾ ਭੁੱਲਿਓ, ਆਪਣੀ ਵੋਟ ਭੁਗਤਾਉਣ ਲਈ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਜਾਣਾ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਐਕਚੁਅਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਫਤਵਾ ਦੇਣਾ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਹੱਥ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈ, ਜਨਤਾ ਤੋਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਕੋਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਜਨਤਾ ਜਨਾਰਦਨ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਹਤਰ ਸਮਝਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਲਿਆਉਣਾ ਤੇ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਬਿਹਤਰੀ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਸੋਚਦੀ ਹੈ। ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ ਦਿਓ, ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ।
ਸਾਡਾ ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇਖਣ ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜਨ ਲਈ ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਕਰੋ ਚੈਨਲ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਤੇ ਨੋਟੀਫਿਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਲਈ ਬੈਲ ਆਈਕਨ ਵਾਲੇ ਬਟਨ ਤੇ ਕਲਿੱਕ ਕਰੋ।